My name isn't Adam Wee. Or is it? Who am I? What number did you dial? Don't ever call here again. I guess I told him nobody messes with Adam Wee.
As I told you before, what we're going to study for this first part of the second semester is really the progressive era. And we've already looked at the four main goals of the progressive era, but it's important to also look at how progressive reforms impacted both the local and the state government, because it affected both of those things, and they're so important at the time after the Industrial Revolution that it's really important to break it down and see how the progressive reforms affected both of those areas. And quickly I'm going to talk about the local government. And the local government, really two ways it affected it. It kind of changed local government, because in the past it had been so corrupt, with corrupt mayors and other political leaders in the big cities, that it really changed after the progressive era started, and we started to see more progressive mayors coming out. And a mayor obviously is the head of a city, or like the town or the municipal corporation where something is at, and we're specifically looking at cities here and the progressive mayors that tried to make their mark on their cities. One of the first ones of these progressive mayors was Samuel Jones, and he was a mayor of Toledo. And his nickname was Samuel Golden Rule Jones, because one thing he believed in was the Golden Rule. And the Golden Rule obviously is one should treat others as one would like others to treat oneself. So kind of do unto others as you would want done to you. And while he was mayor of Toledo, he did a lot of things that you would see as progressive. Like he asked workers to work hard, honest, and follow the Golden Rule. He opened free kindergartens. He built parks and instituted an 8-hour workday. So those are all things that you would see out of a progressive leader, someone trying to make life better for everybody. And Samuel Golden Rule Jones is a good example of a progressive mayor. Another progressive mayor would be Tom Johnson of Cleveland, and he was a socialist, one of like 19 socialist mayors at the time that we would see as progressive, who, and one of his main things he's known for is he tried to take control out of private owners of utilities and put them in the hands of the public. So like the waterworks and electricity and all those different utilities, okay, they were being monopolized, and one person owned all of them and could charge unfair prices, and he wanted to take that control out of the private owners' hands and give it back to the people, so they had more of a say in what they were paying and what it would cost for those utilities. And he's very well known for that. Then we go to New York, and one of the progressive mayors was Seth Low. Some of the things he did while in office in New York was he hired city employees based on merit. So it wasn't because of what they've done for him or help him get elected. He gave positions based on what their strengths were, what they were good at. Okay, he reduced graft in the police department, so he really made it more fair to and just in the police department. And he improved education, and he also lowered taxes. There was another mayor we're talking about in New York that came after Lowe, and that was John P. Mitchell. He also extended the cleaning up of the police department that was so corrupt in New York at that time. So another progressive leader trying to make the city better. One of the other progressive mayors that we want to talk about is Hazen S. Pingree, and he was in Detroit. And he really did a lot of things in Detroit. He cleaned it up big time. Pingree did. He ended corruption in the city paving contracts, in the sewer contracts, corruption in the school board he ended, and he also, a lot like Tom Johnson, he fought privately owned utility monopolies, trying to give it back to the people. He created public welfare programs, so kind of like what we talked about earlier. He created public jobs for the unemployed. He built new schools, parks, and public baths. And one of the cool things that Pingree did while he was the mayor of Detroit is he developed these things called potato patch plan. And these potato patches, what he would do is he would find unused land in the city, and he would grow gardens. And in those gardens, he would grow different fruits and vegetables that he could feed to the poor people of the city. So that was something cool that he would do, and they called that the potato patch plan, trying to feed the poor and make everyone come together, because it would be kind of the middle class people that would come and raise those gardens to help feed everybody. So you could see that at this time, these progressive mayors were really doing a lot to clean up the city. But like I said, there's two different aspects to the local government and the progressive movement. The other aspect was this thing called the city manager system. Okay, we look at progressive mayors, but we still had a lot of corrupt mayors at this time, and some cities were able to change that by going to the city manager system. Okay, there's still kind of a mayor, but now everything's divvied up among people who can work at different aspects or things they're good at. So really what the city manager system is, they can coordinate city activities into little small elected commissions or people working at different spots. And this came about in Galveston, Texas, because they had a hurricane in 1900. And after this hurricane in Texas, the city government really wasn't doing anything, and they really dropped the ball on trying to get clean up and get workers and help. So they kind of established a city manager system where one person could focus on one specific part of the city, and it really worked, and it caught on quickly, and a lot of cities started going to this during the progressive era. So like I said, it came because of corruption kind of in the city government. And another thing that we've talked about already that kind of lent its hand to the city manager system was the scientific management. And if you remember, that was Frederick Winslow Taylor's idea, and it was kind of running on efficiency. And when we looked at it earlier, it was more for scientific management of businesses, but now we're looking at it in the city, because you have each of these different parts that are essential, like the assembly line. Okay, they all were one part in this giant corporation. Well, now we have these different parts in the city. And so Frederick Winslow Taylor really lent himself to the city manager system. So by looking at the mayors and the city manager system, you can see how the local government was very progressive at that time. But we can also look at the state government, because if you're going to change up local government, more than likely you're going to get change in the state government. And it really started with the governor of those states. And one of the most important progressive governors at this time was Robert La Follette. He was the governor of Wisconsin, and he is one of the best examples of a progressive governor that we have. One of the main things he wanted to do while governor of Wisconsin was drive corporations out of politics, because he saw that those big businesses had such an influence in politics, and they could get people elected that would help them out, that he wanted to get them out. He wanted to treat them just like everybody else. He wasn't trying to break them down, but he wanted them out of politics. And there's a lot of other things that you can look at that the state really dealt with during the progressive era. And one of the big progressive reforms that they were pushing for was the protection of children. And because when we looked at the Industrial Revolution, we had all these machines and these factories that needed cheap labor, and both women and children fit the bill for cheap labor. But now that we're progressive, we want to try and protect those children. And one of the groups that was really spearheading this effort was the National Child Labor Committee. And one thing that they tried to pass was the Keating-Owens Act in 1916. And the Keating-Owen Act prohibited the transportation across state lines of goods produced with child labor. So anything that was made by these children working in these factories, they tried to make it illegal to cross state lines. So it'd be really hard to keep those businesses floating with the child labor. Actually, the Keating-Owen Act was declared unconstitutional because it interfered with states' rights to regulate labor. So it didn't pass in the end, but it really did kind of kickstart people and states and these progressive governors to try and protect the children. And like I said, you have the children, but you also have the women. And we've already looked at Louis D. Brandeis in his Brandeis Brief when he talks about women's rights. And they wanted to limit the working hours of women because they were working such long hours in these factories that were really brutal to work at. And Brandeis, he wanted to protect women against their powerful employers, that they had no rights while being in these factories and really no say. And so he wanted to keep their work days to 10 hours or less. And one of the court cases where he had his Brandeis Brief was Moeller versus Oregon. And Moeller is Kurt Moeller, and he had this laundry business. And he was fighting the 10-hour workday because he had a woman working in his laundry business. And he asked that female worker to work overtime, and he was sued because of it, because she wasn't supposed to work longer than 10 hours, and he had asked her to do that. And he took it to court, and he lost, and he had to, in the end, pay a $10 fine for that. So it seems kind of silly, but he was going to fight that 10-hour workday for women, and he lost because of the Brandeis Brief. Another thing that was happening at the state level because of the progressive era was reforms with elections, and that was something that was totally unfair at the time, and there was a lot of corruption in it was the elections. And I'm just going to give you a couple of different terms or things that changed during the progressive era that dealt with election. One of them was the secret ballot. We now have the secret ballot because of the progressive era, and that is voters' choice in elections remain anonymous. Another thing that came with elections was an initiative. And an initiative is a bill that originates by the people rather than just the lawmakers. So if someone wants something to be passed, they can have an initiative to try and get a bill passed. A referendum is a vote on the initiative, okay, or the bill originating by the people. And then there was another thing called a recall. And what a recall is it enables voters to remove a public official from elected positions before the end of their term, because usually you'd have to wait until their term was up, even if they were corrupt. But now the voters can remove those officials from elected positions if enough of them ask for it. So they can have a vote to try and recall or remove that elected position from officer. One of the most important things, though, dealing with elections that came out of the progressive era was a move to make senators more responsive to the public or work harder for their people. And what happened there was the 17th Amendment, where the people directly elect the senators so that they have more of a tie to the public. Because now if they know that they're going to be elected in by the public and they want re-election, they need to do things for the public and look out for those people. So the 17th Amendment, recall, referendum, the initiative, and the secret ballot were all very important things that came with elections during the progressive era.